Hello students, today we will be studying about long-term regulation of blood pressure and the role of renal body fluid mechanism and the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system. So let's start. We know about the regulatory mechanisms of blood pressure that we have a short-term mechanism, intermediate control mechanism, and then we have this long-term regulation of blood pressure. The short-term mechanism are the rapid mechanism which are mainly controlled by the nervous system. The intermediate control mechanism, we have the vascular mechanism, and also it is believed by some people that renin and angiotensin also exerts its action in the intermediate control of blood pressure. Then we have this long-term regulation of blood pressure. This is the system which is occurring within weeks to months, and this long-term control of arterial pressure is closely intertwined with the homeostasis of the body fluid volume for the long-term survival. So this is a precise control for the blood pressure. It has two components. One is the renal body fluid system, another is the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system. So we'll be learning about these systems in our class today. The renal body fluid system for the control of arterial pressure acts slowly, but it is a very powerful system. How does it act? Supposedly there is a decrease in blood volume, it means there will also be a decrease in arterial blood pressure. So what is the role of kidney? The kidney will reabsorb more of the fluid and excrete less, as a result of which there will be an increase in fluid volume, therefore increase in blood pressure. Similarly, whenever there is increase in blood volume, increase arterial pressure, the kidney will cause more of the renal output of water, which is also known by the name of pressure diuresis. And when there is an increased amount of excretion of the salt, it is also known as pressure natriuresis. So these are the mechanisms by which kidney exerts its role on the long-term pressure control system. The renal body fluid mechanism acts on the principle of nearly infinite feedback gain. So what is this principle? First we'll study this graphical representation of arterial pressure versus the intake or output. As you can see here, the x-axis we have blood pressure ranging from 0 to 200, and on y-axis we have the intake or the output times the normal. Here you can see in this curve the point which is marked as equilibrium point. So what is this point? This is a point which is representing where the renal input is equal to the renal output of water and salt. So this is an intersection. So let us assume what happens when a blood pressure rises to 150 millimeters of mercury. You can see in this graph the output is increasing how many times? It is increasing 3 times. So what will happen? With the increase in blood pressure, the renal output is increasing. So the blood volume will decrease and the pressure will be brought all the way back exactly to the equilibrium level. Similarly, whenever there is a fall in blood pressure below the equilibrium point, the intake of water and salt is greater than that of the output. Therefore, the blood volume will increase. It will cause increase in blood pressure, and again, once again, the pressure will return back exactly to the equilibrium point. Therefore, this long-term mechanism by renal body fluid mechanism is acting on the principle of nearly infinite feedback gain, because it is trying to bring back the blood pressure exactly to the equilibrium point. The two basic determinants of long-term pressure control mechanism are first the renal output and second is the level of intake of salt and water. So renal output we have studied, it is a curve. So shifting of curve along the pressure axis determines the long-term pressure changes, and secondly the changing levels of the salt and water intake will also influence these long-term blood pressure changes. To understand this, we'll see in this figure we show two types of graph. The first one is the graph that will help us to understand about the role of the renal output. Here on the x-axis we see blood pressure ranging from 0 to 250 millimeters, and on the y-axis we have the intake or the output times the normal. We have the blue curve. In the blue curve, the arterial pressure is 50 millimeters of the mercury, and the equilibrium point corresponds to the level of 1. Now look at this red curve. The arterial pressure is 100 and the equilibrium point has shifted to 150. So there is an increase of this equilibrium point, shifting 50 millimeter higher than the normal. Therefore one can state that if renal output curve shifts to a new pressure level, the arterial pressure will follow to this new pressure level within a few days. Okay. Then we have this second curve. Here you observe that the intake of salt and water has increased 4 times the normal. So with this increase in fourfold, the equilibrium point is also shifting. It has shifted from normal of 100 to 160 millimeters of mercury. That means 60 millimeter above the normal point. And conversely, a decrease in the intake would result in decrease in the arterial pressure. Therefore we can conclude that without changing these two basic determinants, it is impossible to change the long-term mean arterial pressure. Beside the pressure body fluid mechanism of the kidney, another powerful mechanism which controls the long-term blood pressure is the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system. This is nothing but the set of hormones which tightly regulates the blood pressure. So it starts with the activation or release of renin, leading to the activation of angiotensin II, then activation of aldosterone. Then this whole system acts to control the blood pressure. So beginning with the activation of the renin, it is done by mainly the juxtaglomerular cells which release the renin, and it is activated by the mechanoreceptors which sense the low blood pressure by the incoming blood. Then it is the sympathetic nerve which are activated during the stressful conditions, and then we have the macula densa cells which are basically the chemoreceptors which sense the quantity of sodium or chloride inflowing through the tubule. So let's know about this system. We know that the effective circulatory volume is not a anatomical volume, but instead it is a functional blood volume that is reflecting the extent of tissue perfusion, and it is sensed by the fullness or the pressure in the blood vessels. The main mechanism by which this effective circulatory volume is being regulated is through the signals which are sent to the kidney. So we have 4 parallel mechanisms which send signal to the kidney. First we say is the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system. Then we have the autonomic nervous system, the posterior pituitary which causes the release of vasopressin, and the atrial stretch receptors which causes the release of ANP. So out of these 4 parallel mechanisms, the most important is the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system, because it is not just controlling the effective circulatory volume, it controls the volume of ECF which include both the blood plasma and the interstitial fluid. Therefore the kidney ultimately governs the blood volume, and it is thus the principal agent in the long-term control of mean arterial pressure. The sympathetic signals are also received by the juxtaglomerular apparatus, and they act on the efferent arteriole through the B1 receptors, and it causes the vasoconstriction of the efferent arteriole, and it also stimulates the renin release. Macula densa cells sense the amount of sodium and chloride that flows through the tubule. So what happens whenever there is increase or decrease in the blood pressure, the amount of sodium, the glomerular filtration rate will also vary, and when glomerular filtration rate will vary, it will also cause change in the sodium and chloride ion which will flow through the tubule, as a result of which it will be sensed up by the macula densa cells, and appropriate adjustment will be done for the reabsorption or excretion of sodium and water. So as we have seen, whenever there is a decrease in blood pressure, the amount of sodium and chloride ion depicted by blue and yellow color will be less. So this less amount will be detected by the macula densa cells, which will cause the stimulation of renin, and this renin will cause increased reabsorption of sodium and chloride ion along with water to bring back blood pressure to normal. Similarly, when there is an increase in blood pressure, it will result in increase in glomerular filtration rate, causing increase in sodium chloride reaching the tubule, and it will be sensed by the macula densa cells. The macula densa cells will then send the signals to decrease the secretion of renin, and this decreased secretion of renin will result in decreased reabsorption of sodium and water, hence bringing back the blood pressure towards normal. The release of renin is also influenced by the baroreceptors which are present in the juxtaglomerular apparatus. These are the baroreceptors. Whenever there is increased stretch on the mechanoreceptor, which is produced by the increased blood pressure, so what will happen? There will be decrease in the renin release because we do not want the reabsorption. And whenever there is decreased stretch because of the decreased blood pressure, what will happen? Renin will be released, and this renin will cause the activation of renin angiotensin aldosterone system to bring about the reabsorption of salt and water, bringing back the blood. Now talking about the renin, renin is just like any other hormone, protein hormone, which is synthesized as a large pre-pro hormone. Human pre-pro renin contains 406 amino acids. Then it is converted into prorenin that remains after the removal of the leader sequence of 23 amino acids, and residues from the amino acid terminal contains 383 amino acids. And after the removal of pro sequence from the prorenin, we get renin, which contains 340 amino acid. Prorenin as such has little biological activity, so this prorenin is converted to renin in the kidney, and some of this form is secreted, as you can see here. The prorenin is also secreted by other organs also, including the ovaries, but it is secreted in a very less amount, very little is secreted. The prorenin is secreted constitutively, whereas the active renin is secreted by the secretory granules of the juxtaglomerular cells. Once renin is formed, it then circulates in the plasma and looks for the primary substrate. The substrate it finds is the circulating angiotensin, which is produced basically by the liver, and it is 453 amino acid long. So renin acts on this and removes a major part of angiotensin protein, leaving behind a small fragment, that is angiotensin 1. This angiotensin 1 just contains 10 amino acids, and then it circulates in the bloodstream and reaches the various capillaries in the blood. So when it reaches the endothelial cells lining the vessels in the lung, then we have an enzyme here which is known by the name of ACE, or the angiotensin converting enzyme. This then converts angiotensin 1 to angiotensin 2. The angiotensin 1 is then converted into angiotensin 2. That angiotensin 2 contains just 8 amino acid, but this enzyme is very powerful enzyme known by the name of angiotensin 2. Angiotensin 2 so formed is also known by the name of hypertensin. Earlier it was known by the name of hypertensin or angiotonin. So angiotensin, why is it known by this name? Angio means blood vessel and tensin means to make everything tense. So angiotensin 2 acts on the smooth muscle lining of the arteriole all over the body and causes them to tense up or contract, leading to the vasoconstriction of these blood vessels and also increases the resistance to the flow. That means that this angiotensin is causing both a rise in systolic and diastolic blood pressure. It is one of the most potent vasoconstrictor known. It is approximately 4 to 8 times as active as norepinephrine on weight basis in a normal individual. Angiotensin 2 has the following actions: direct action and the indirect action. By acting directly on the kidney, angiotensin causes the constriction of the efferent arteriole, and they also act on the proximal convoluted tubule, where it influences the reabsorption of sodium from the filtrate. And then it has an indirect action. It is through the aldosterone, and aldosterone mediates the reabsorption of salt and water. Beside that, angiotensin also act on the hypothalamus, which is situated at the base of the brain, and it stimulates thirst and increase the production of ADH hormone. Now angiotensin 2 has two important roles when it controls the blood pressure. The first role is the rapid role, which acts within a minutes. That is because of the vasoconstrictor effect throughout the blood vessels, causing vasoconstriction of the arteriole. The second role is more pronounced. It is a slower role, but it preserves the extracellular fluid volume and hence it controls the long-term blood pressure. So what is the role of angiotensin 2 on the kidney? It influences the microcirculation and hence the Starling forces. So it acts on the efferent arteriole and binds to the receptors which are present there, and it causes the activation of G-coupled receptor pathway, that is GQ, leading to the increase of IP3 and DAG, increased calcium, and this calcium mediates vasoconstriction of the efferent arteriole more than afferent arteriole because of its basal diameter. So what will happen whenever the efferent arteriole will constrict? This will make less of the blood to leave the glomerulus. So more blood will remain in the glomerulus, therefore it preserves the glomerular filtration rate. However, when it is more in amount, both the efferent and the afferent arterioles will constrict. So when both of these will constrict, this will decrease both the renal blood flow and the GFR. So both these forces acting together, depending upon the setting, would alter the pericapillary forces which are present, and it will facilitate the reabsorption of sodium and water. We said that there will be adjustment of the Starling forces in the peritubular capillaries to favor the reabsorption of sodium and water, and reabsorption will result in increase in water retention. Then this will result in increase in blood pressure and therefore correction of the blood pressure on long-term basis. So what happens whenever there is constriction of both the efferent and the afferent arteriole? There will be decrease in hydrostatic pressure. As you can see here, whenever there is decrease in hydrostatic pressure of the peritubular capillary, so what will happen? Less of fluid will filter into the nephron, so more will be retained. So more fluid retention means increase in the blood fluid volume, and this will result in increase in blood pressure. The second way of conservation of water is by constriction of the efferent arteriole. The efferent arteriole constriction will result in increase in filtration fraction. Therefore, there will be an increase in colloid osmotic pressure. As you can see, the peritubular colloid osmotic pressure, which is responsible for the reabsorption of the fluid, will increase. So there will be more reabsorption of the fluid from the nephron into the peritubular capillaries, which will then move into the circulation. So by both these methods, it is causing the reabsorption of water from the peritubular capillaries to the generalized circulation, thereby it is increasing the blood pressure. Angiotensin also acts directly to increase the activity of this sodium hydrogen antiporter. As you can see here, increased amount of sodium will be reabsorbed, and this sodium through the basolateral membrane using the sodium potassium ATPase pump will be reabsorbed into the general circulation. The reabsorption of sodium along with water will result in increase in fluid volume and increase in blood pressure. Whenever the decrease in blood pressure stimulates the angiotensin II, this angiotensin II travels up to the brain where it stimulates the osmoreceptors. The osmoreceptors are stimulated to increase the thirst, acting primarily on the thirst centers which are present there, and then it also causes the release of ADH through the posterior pituitary, and this ADH causes the reabsorption of fluid mainly by the distal convoluted tubule and the collecting duct, therefore increasing the fluid reabsorption and increasing the blood pressure way back to normal. So this is the mechanism of angiotensin that is acting through the brain. The ADH hormone which is released by the posterior pituitary now reaches the distal convoluted tubule and the collecting duct. Here it acts on the V2 receptors, and acting on the V2 receptors it causes the movement of the aquaporin from the basolateral side to the luminal side. So once this is moved, what will happen? There will be the increased reabsorption of the water through these aquaporin channels because they are permeable to water. So this ADH acting through the Whenever there is activation of the renin-angiotensin system, it also stimulates the secretion of aldosterone. The aldosterone hormone acts on the principal cells of the distal nephron to bring about reabsorption of sodium and water. And we know this reabsorption of sodium and water will help to increase the blood volume, and this increase in blood volume will cause increase in blood pressure, and therefore it will help to maintain the long-term elevation of arterial pressure. So how is it done? First, this aldosterone hormone increases the production of sodium potassium ATPase channel on the basolateral side, and this sodium potassium ATPase channel will cause the pumping out of sodium into the plasma. Second, it also increases the epithelial sodium channels, and these are the channels which mediate the reabsorption of sodium from the luminal side. So increased sodium reabsorption will be then into the interstitial fluid and finally into the capillary blood. It also increases the mitochondrial activity for this sodium potassium ATPase and also increases the activity of phospholipase. So all these action of aldosterone will promote the increase in the sodium and water retention, causing increase in the extracellular fluid volume, leading secondarily to the increased elevation of blood pressure. Let's analyze the role of angiotensin II in the control of arterial pressure on long-term basis. Here you can see a figure. In this figure we have two types of curve. One is the red one, another one is the blue one. The red one, as you can see, the angiotensin level in the blood is written to be 0, meaning thereby that in dogs, when the renin-angiotensin system was blocked by angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitor, that is ACE inhibitor, the angiotensin system has been blocked in this red curve. And on the right side we have angiotensin level, that is 2.5 times the normal. It was achieved by infusing the dog with the angiotensin at the level of 2.5 times the normal. So what do you observe or note from this figure? The equilibrium point for the red one is at 75 millimeters. That means for 0 angiotensin level, the arterial pressure level of 75 millimeters of mercury is there, equilibrium point, and at the level of 2.5 times the equilibrium level is 115 millimeters of mercury. Therefore, the action of angiotensin is to cause renal retention of salt and water that can have a powerful influence in promoting chronic elevation of arterial pressure, and this is achieved by retention of salt and water through aldosterone system or by direct action on the kidney. Renin-angiotensin system also helps to maintain a normal arterial pressure despite the variations of salt intake in a person. So this is an automatic feedback mechanism, as we can see in this figure. Increased salt intake is associated with the increase in extracellular fluid volume and the blood volume, which results in increase in blood pressure. Increased blood pressure results in decrease of the renin-angiotensin aldosterone system, decreased retention of salt and water, and then arterial blood pressure return back to the normal. So what will happen whenever this renin-angiotensin system is working? Despite a 100-fold increase in the salt intake, the blood pressure will rise only by 4 to 6 millimeters of mercury. And supposedly this renin-angiotensin system is blocked, what will happen? The blood pressure rises approximately 10 times, that is, it is 50 to 60 millimeters of mercury than the normal increase. So we can see the effectivity of this system in maintaining the normal arterial pressure. Here we see the role of renin-angiotensin aldosterone system, which is activated by decrease in blood pressure. You should be able to outline the role of various hormones which are present here to bring back the blood pressure towards normal. In this graph, you should be able to analyze the role of kidney in the blood pressure control mechanism with a special reference to the renin-angiotensin system. Here you should be able to interpret the graph which is shown below between the arterial pressure and the urinary volume output. The two terms we know is, one is the pressure diuresis, referring to the effect of pressure to the increase in water secretion, and second, here in this figure we have role of blood pressure control mechanism, the different mechanisms which are occurring within seconds to minutes, then hours, and then days. You should be able to interpret the role of different mechanisms with their physiological basis. This is a reference material for today's class. So we end our today's class. In case of any query, you can WhatsApp me on my personal WhatsApp number between the timing of 10 to 1. And thank you so much.